So today I'm chatting with Stacy Thorwart, the founder of The Intelligent Designer, on an online education platform that teaches interior designers how to seamlessly integrate AI into their workflows. Hi, Stacy.
Hi, Scotty.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to talk to you about AI and, how designers can use it to be more productive and, also to sort of stay ahead of things. So maybe you could start by sharing with us how you what your background is and how you got started, what your interest was in AI and how you started your business.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks so much for having me. So a little bit about my background. I am a trained interior designer and have spent really the bulk of my career working on the commercial side of interior design, largely in the furniture industry. I also had my own residential design firm at a point in time, so really understand the pains of both sides of the industry. And where AI came into the picture for me was really from a place of natural curiosity. As AI tools started to emerge and become more popular, I wanted to personally understand how I could use them to be more productive. I'm a working mom. I have 2 little ones, so I'm always naturally interested in anything that's going to help me save time and be more productive. And so I started down a path of trying to explore AI and figure out what tools could help me best in my process. And as I was going through this sort of self-discovery and self-teaching of trying to teach myself a lot of these tools, I felt like there was an opportunity to help other designers learn how to embrace AI. A lot of what I found in terms of tutorials felt like they were more geared towards tech professionals or people with a tech background. And so I wanted to just look for a way to break down some of those barriers to make AI a little bit less scary and to start to open up the conversation with other design professionals about how we could start using it to help us rather than to fear it.
Did you start? Because I know you have a pretty big following on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised at how quickly that happened. Like, you've only really had this account for a year. And you have almost 200,000 followers. So it seems like it's something that the industry, though, there's some concerns around it, they're starting to really get excited and embrace it. So did you start there, or, you have a couple courses? Did you start with the courses or Instagram? How did that evolve?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would agree that the response from the design community really took off faster than even I expected. So I think that just reaffirms that there is a tremendous amount of interest from the design community around the world for how to start to harness these tools. But to answer your question, both the launch of my first course, which was AI for interior designers, and the launch of my Instagram page were really happening right at the same time. So anyone that's ever gone through the process of launching a course, an online course, you know that you really have to have a very solid online community. So as I was building the course, building my community on Instagram was equally important and top of mind. And much of the success that I've had through the course launch has been a direct result of the Instagram community, which they've just been a fantastic community from around the world.
Yeah, well, you're posting the content that you post it's interesting, but it's also really useful and really valuable. And I'm sure just, everybody appreciates a little bit, a free nugget here and there that's actually useful. Were you a little trepidatious about sort of going out there and raising the flag for it, or how was the response when you went out there with that?
Yeah, I would say overall, the response has been positive. Maybe I'll go as far to say even more positive than what I was expecting. Now, that said, there's certainly still, a large cohort of people that are fearful of the technology. And I think with any sort of messaging and when we're having these conversations, is to really just always try and lead from a place of empathy. And I get it. I understand the concerns around AI, especially with a lot of the things that we're seeing in the media about negative use cases for AI. But overall, I would say that our community of designers, we've been through tremendous changes in the past. If we think back with the invention of tools like Revit and before that AutoCAD, or even if you think about platforms like Pinterest and all these things that have really disrupted our industry before, we've navigated those waters. And I think this is just the next frontier that we're going to need to navigate. So I think it's like with any conversation, even though obviously I have a strong point of view that we should be embracing these technologies, I also always love a good, healthy debate and to understand the other point of view of other designers who may be a little bit more hesitant to embrace it and jump in.
Yeah. So when you do get that pushback, what are some of the concerns that you hear?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest one is always, is this going to replace my job? So I think that's the number one fear when you start to see these beautiful AI generated images that can be generated in a matter of seconds. There's this immediate hesitation of, well, then is my whole job, is my career going to disappear overnight? And, I would say for anyone, as you start to use AI, the tools that exist in their current state more and more, you quickly start to realize that the tools are so far from that point where they could ever replace the complexity of what a designer does. So usually when someone is super hesitant about that, I often just ask, have you tried it? Have you tried any of the tools yet? Because you usually find the people that are using them the most are less fearful about them actually replacing their job. And then the other thing I would say too is just that ethical consideration with things like privacy concerns about how their data is being used to train AI models. And that is a very relevant concern. I think we should all be thinking about that and pushing for legislature and guidelines that are going to help protect creators and artists from having models trained without their permission. So those are two of the common concerns that come up, and they're valid. And so I think we just need to keep those in mind and not dismiss those comments as they come up.
So without the legislation that has, we don't have that yet, is there anything that designers should consider that they can do to protect themselves and their clients?
Yeah. So behind the scenes, I think there is a lot happening. If you keep up with what's happening in Congress and different legislature that's trying to get passed, there's a lot that is, I think, happening, moving in a positive direction. But in the meantime, I think first and foremost, it sounds basic, but any tool that you are going to use, just making sure you really understand the specific terms and conditions of that tool. Not all tools are created equal. Not all AI models are created equal in terms of the material it was trained on. So number one, you want to make sure you're just familiarizing yourself with the terms and conditions of the tools that you're using. And then also think about if you're ever sharing sensitive information, especially with chatbots. Like if you have client information that could be considered sensitive, you would definitely want to think twice before just blindly uploading that to a chatbot without getting the client's permission. So leading with transparency with your clients about how you're using AI in your design practice and process. And then the third thing, and also in line with the topic of transparency, is I'm a big advocate for always labeling when you're using an AI generated image, whether that's on social media or in your portfolio or on your website. Number one, I think it highlights that you're using a new technology, but it also helps make sure that we're putting those right practices in place so that we can still have a way to differentiate real design work from AI generated images.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how have you, from some people who've taken your course or anyone you've spoken with, what have they said when they disclose to their clients that they use ChatGPT or one of the chatbots? How has the response been from clients?
I think overall it's been positive. Now, of course, that's going to depend highly on the client and other parts of the design process and the firm that they're working with outside of just that one piece. But I think if you have a strong relationship with your client and you're communicating transparently how you're using it, I think you're actually showing a real advantage and potentially even a cost savings to the client. If I put myself in the client shoes, which I'm in the middle of a home renovation where I am the client, I embrace companies that are using the latest technology because I know that's going to help them work more efficiently and deliver a better project. So I think overall clients understand that. And I think we're probably not that far off from a point where there is going to start to be more expectations from clients that the firms that they're hiring are starting to use some of these tools to work more efficiently.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like when Pinterest came out, and I feel like that was a big scare for designers too. And now it's part of their workflow, seemingly. Most designers and their clients are constantly using it.
Exactly. Yeah. I think similar to that, it will just be another tool for collaboration that we'll learn to navigate in conjunction with the clients.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk a little bit about what areas you think, AI is most impactful for designers in, their business.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say the easy answer is that if you were to unroll and look at all phases of the design process, there are opportunities to start injecting AI into it as a way to work more efficiently. But in terms of where it can really help creatively in the process, I think earlier into the design process. So as we think about early programming, project research, concept design into schematic design, those early phases really lend themselves to image generators, tools like Midjourney or Stable Diffusion. And I say that because if you've used any of those tools before, you know that they can generate really beautiful, high quality images, but they're still challenged in terms of the degree of control that you have over the image. So as you get further into the process and you have your exact room dimension and your exact layout and your exact furniture pieces and materials that you've selected, at that point, you're going to find it very frustrating to work with an image generator. Much like at that point in the project, you probably still wouldn't be going out to Pinterest or another image site for inspiration. So one of the easiest places to start and to start using it in a really powerful way is when you're seeking inspiration for your projects in that early stages, to use it as another basically creative engine or image engine that you can go out to instead of just a traditional way like Pinterest or magazines or other design blogs.
I tried one time to take an actual chair, like a real chair that exists, and tell it to add this chair into this specific, vignette, this scene, and it did not work.
Yes, and I hear that very often. And I will say, while that's a real struggle today, I can tell you firsthand that there are a lot of app developers and technologists that are working to improve some of that functionality, because you can imagine from, a manufacturer's perspective, they really want to be able to have, their product show up in an AI image. So I think we're going to start to see these tools have the capability to do some of those more advanced techniques and functions, but they're just not there yet today. And it could be very frustrating if you do go into it thinking that they can do one thing when it's just not where they excel yet.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's not quite that perfect yet. That's smart, I should say. That's smart yet to take this actual chair and put it in a specific environment.
Exactly.
Well, okay, so that's image generation, design development, brainstorming, pre-design. Are there any other areas in the process that you find it's really valuable for designers?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of other tools that bubble up in terms of, this is more related to commercial interior designers, but there are a lot of AI tools and plugins available now that can help with optimizing floor plans. So when you're looking to lay out a floor plan of, say, workstations or a restaurant layout or whatever it is you're trying to lay out, a lot of that information now AI models can be trained on to help you optimize a space for things like energy efficiency or ADA accessibility, or you name it, depending on what you're trying to achieve with a space or certain adjacencies. The models can be trained and have been trained on that type of data, which can be a really powerful tool for designers to leverage as they're working on, more commercial type projects. And I think we'll start to see that even more layered in with some residential design projects as well. So that's one area, and that technology already exists. And I think a lot of the larger firms are starting to use it. And we'll only see that trend continue to grow. And then the other way, as I think back and put more of like my residential designer hat on, or even this is true for commercial designers as well. But, so much that we do as design is actually selling. It's selling our designs, right? We have to ultimately, a client has to sign on with us for a design. So tools like ChatGPT and chatbots can be so helpful in terms of helping you develop what that sales presentation is going to look like, what those key talking points are going to be, what information to put in your proposal. Or one of my favorite ways to use it is before you're going into a client presentation or a client meeting, ask it to generate a list of questions that you might get asked by your client and ideal ways to overcome objections or respond to objections. So using it as a challenger to help you win more business and use it for new business development activities, I think there's so much opportunity there for more firms to start integrating it into that part of their process before they even win the project.
And we use it a lot in our business. And I find that those things that you do sort of over and over and over again, that has sort of a repeatable process, or outline, is a great use case for AI.
Yeah. And one more I would add too that I don't see a ton of firms using yet, but I think we will get there quickly. Such a key part of design meetings is the note taking, right? To make sure that you're capturing all of the details and then applying those changes to the design, sending the meeting notes so that the client, ensures that you're making those changes. And all of that can be automated now very easily with AI meeting note takers. So I think that's an easy one, low-hanging fruit that firms could quickly start to integrate just to reduce some of that friction with capturing meeting notes and making sure all of those changes are accounted for after the meetings.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a ton of tools. I feel like there's a lot of tools that do that now. And we use several like video tools even that do AI transcript. And it's great. You can ask it questions and you'll go in and tell you certain things. Creating, standard operating procedures. So for bigger firms that are, and even smaller firms, but that are, having new hires coming in and they have, procedures for them to follow, that's another great use for AI. Absolutely. Nobody likes writing SOPs.
Absolutely. Yes. Anything that could be considered a dull task or easily repeatable, that is an easy one to start to think about how you can outsource it to AI. I often challenge designers to think about, in terms of their week or even their day, what are those parts of their project that they really don't enjoy or that they really struggle with? And start there in terms of figuring out where AI can help. Maybe don't go right to the image generator, as fun as that can be. Maybe that's not what you most want to outsource. Figure out those pain points in your process and then start to figure out from that what AI tool might be the most helpful.
That's really good advice. I could see make a list of all the things you don't enjoy doing in your business and see if you can outsource those to AI.
Yes. Exactly. It's a good exercise.
Yeah. So I'm curious if you know much about AI agents. Those have sort of, I feel like they were kind of like a hot topic and then kind of like fizzled out. But what do you know? What do you think about the opportunity for that?
Yeah, I think like anything else, it's worth experimenting with. I would say I would agree with that. They are sort of rising and falling in popularity. It's very easy to do. You can do it for free with a basic ChatGPT plan. I don't even think you need a plan anymore to start to build those out. So it's very easy to do if you want to experiment with it. But I think some of the general versions of the tool are getting more and more sophisticated, where the need for some of those secondary agents may become less necessary over time. Kind of similar to, we were hearing a lot about prompt engineering and prompt writing for a while. And over time, prompt writing should be as effortless as this conversation, where you just go back and forth in real language to remove that friction and those barriers. So I think similarly with these agents, they're going to become less needed, just like prompt writing is going to be less needed as the tools continue to advance.
I was curious about whether there was any opportunity for them to do more data entry kind of things for designers. You know, it's right. Every designer I know hates that part of the job and writing specs and all of that. So I was just curious down the road if we might see some opportunity there with AI.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there are, like, on the ChatGPT, where you can search for all of the existing agents, there's been some really interesting ones that have already been built that are publicly available. So that could be an easy place to start, to just do a quick search to see what's out there and see if there's one that's already been created that you could use or riff off of further.
Well, so you mentioned prompting. So do you have, because, you know, I've heard that that's pretty important, at least for now, it's still pretty important. What kind of advice or recommendations would you give to designers on how to create, you know, using prompts, what they're looking for?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and definitely one that I'm asked about a lot as designers get started with it. So I'll answer it in two ways because it's a little bit different depending on if you're using a chatbot versus an image generator. So with an image generator, a tool like Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, you really want to keep your prompt very short and concise. And I think that is a challenge often for designers because we have so many words in our head that we would use to, or we think we need to use to describe a space. But ultimately, that's just going to confuse the image generator. So number one, you want to make sure that your prompt is really concise. You want to keep the keywords, so the most important words of your prompt, at the front of the prompt, because the AI models actually place greater emphasis on words at the beginning of the prompt than they do at the end of the prompt. And another technique too that I often recommend when you're starting out with it is that you can usually see with a tool like Midjourney, for example, you can see what other prompts people are using and use those to start to create their own. They're all publicly viewable on the Midjourney website. So that's another great way to just see if you find an image that you like, click on it to see what the prompt is. And that can be a really easy way to start to apply it to generate your own prompts. But overall, keep them short and concise. And then on the chatbot side, so for a tool like ChatGPT, it's a different answer and a different way of prompting. You don't have to worry about being concise. In fact, you really want to think about providing it with as much context as possible. The biggest mistake that people use with chatbots is that, you know, they mistake them for mind readers and that they don't provide them often any information for them to get a response back that really sounds authentic to them and their personal brand. So the best way to do that is to provide examples and to provide relevant information. I like to think about it, if you were outsourcing this task to, say, an intern in your company, what information would you provide them to get back the result that you wanted? And that's the level of information you want to be thinking about providing to a tool like ChatGPT to get a better response back from it.
Can you give it information that it will remember? And is that only available on the paid version?
It's a great question. And the short answer is that it's constantly changing. So even at the time of this recording, in a month from now, it may be different. But at the time of this recording, it does have a memory feature that is part of the free version. And you will see as you're using it, it will say memory updated. And there's a way that you can, in your settings, you can click into your settings to see exactly what it remembered. And if there's anything that you want to adjust in that, you can clear that out and update that at any time. And you can also start what they call, I think they call it like a one-off chat, where you can chat with it and it won't hold on to that information. And that's a really helpful feature that allows you to continue on in a conversation without having to constantly remind it of what you talked about before, which I think we're just going to start to see that layered into more and more of the other chatbots that are out there as well.
Yeah, I remember early on, you had to constantly remind it
Yes.
what your company was, what it did, who it served.
Right. Exactly.
So being able to teach it and have it remember, valuable for obviously who your target client is, but I would imagine also for any marketing, social media. So what do you, sort of suggest for designers when it comes to their marketing, to their social media? How can they use the chatbots for that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say what it can often do when you start to use a chatbot and you need that information, it can really sort of force you to make sure you have that written down in a concise way so that you can share it easily with the chatbot and have it remember it, which is a great thing because it helps us all really tighten up, what is our value proposition, what are our core values and things that we may or may not all firms may have all of that documented. And so I'd say to start, if you don't have those things documented, you can use ChatGPT to help you define those things, to help you really hone in on what is your target audience and who is your ideal avatar, and work with it to do that first, to really start to pinpoint who is your target audience. How can you niche down? The interior design industry is obviously it's a very saturated market. So we all need to look for ways to stand out. And ChatGPT can be a fantastic resource to help you really hone in on your messaging. So I'd say use it for that first, document all of that, keep it in an easy to store file, and then have it easily at your disposal so you can, whatever AI tool you're using, you can simply copy and paste it in and have it ready to go if it doesn't have that memory feature built into it already.
So if a designer wanted to play around with that and start using ChatGPT to kind of, frame that out, how would they get started? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's kind of marketing 101, but thinking about who is your ideal client? And then what the next step further is, what are their pain points? What are they trying to solve? And so how you would do that with a chatbot is providing a little bit of information about your business as an interior designer, your background, being able to describe. So you do need to be able to describe, who your ideal client is that you want to work with, and then ask ChatGPT to help you identify what pain points this avatar might have. And it will understand things like, by saying, I'm trying to create an ideal client persona or an ideal client avatar. Can you help me with this? And so I think oftentimes it's just first the awareness that you could be using ChatGPT to help you with this. And then just starting to engage in a conversation similar as if you were hiring, a marketing agency to help you hone in on your messaging.
It's pretty amazing. Once you kind of start having the conversation, sometimes it feels a little eerie, I will say. But then again, sometimes it's also funny because I'll, hallucinate and we'll say things that aren't true. And if you call it out, if you say like, well, actually that doesn't make sense, then it will say, oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Funny. It's still, clearly it's got a ways to go. But yeah, I think also, like you said, just getting in there and using it, even if you spend just a couple, minutes a day just playing around with it, you'll be surprised like how much easier it feels to use and get used to. What are some of the challenges that you've come across designers, when they're trying to incorporate it into their business? What challenges have come up?
Yeah, so I would answer that in two ways, thinking about the residential designers and commercial interior designers. So on the commercial interior design side, I would say the larger the firm, the more policies that were quickly put into place around how you can use AI inside of that firm. So a lot of the bigger organizations, as they're working to figure out what tools are safe to use from a legal perspective, many firms put out a mandate of you can't use AI for projects or client related work or at work. And so because of that stopped a lot of designers from exploring how to use it. And obviously you have to, respect the wishes and be sensitive to what your firm is asking you to do and what your bosses are asking you to do. But at the same time, I think when there's those sort of blanket mandates that go out, it can stifle people from experimenting and figuring out safe ways to use it. So I think the larger firms are definitely grappling with that, or some firms have, a small team or a small core team of folks that are in charge of figuring out their AI policies, the AI tools they're going to use, or the in-house models that they're going to train. So that team is, the designated worrier and learner about AI, and then very few other individuals inside of the organization are engaging with it. And I think that's a bit limiting, and it's stifling some of the firms from really learning how to leverage it in the way that they could if more people inside of their organization were learning how to use these tools. So that is a challenge, I think, on the commercial design side. And then on the residential design side, I think by sheer nature of them, a lot of residential firms are smaller in nature. So a lot of the firm leaders were, it was easier for them to start to integrate it and adopt it. They didn't have, 50 layers of approval to go through in the same way that some larger firms have to deal with. So in that way, I think that's a possible advantage for these smaller firms, that they can start to embrace it more quickly. But I think the biggest challenge, and I'm challenged by this myself with launching my course, it's that the technology is constantly changing. So there are literally times as I was recording the course that I would have to go back and re-record some of the modules because the technology had already changed, or something on the platform was moved around to a different place. So the pace at which these tools are evolving can make it really overwhelming for designers to keep up with all of it. And because there are so many tools out there that are marketing themselves as, the AI tool for designers or the best image generator for design enthusiasts, that can be a lot of noise for designers to have to navigate with a limited amount of time to learn and embrace something new. So that's another challenge, I think, that we're going to have to figure out which are the tools that are really worth using, and how do we get good at a handful of tools that are going to move the needle in the practice versus trying to keep up with everything, which would be impossible.
Yeah. And how would you recommend that designers go about trying to figure out, what the best tools are for them?
Yeah, well, I would say that's definitely something I aim to do with my platform. So that's really through my education platform. The main goal is to help distill through some of that noise and share only the tools that I really think are worth using. But I'm certainly not the only creator in that space. So I would say whether that's through social media accounts, like whether that's Instagram or TikTok or Twitter, find other creators that are learning how to use AI tools and learn through them, learn through the free content that they share. I'm also a huge proponent of signing up for AI newsletters. So if you find one or two AI newsletters, you can literally just Google it and you will find a great list of different ones that you can follow. And I can share the link to mine as well to sign up. But there are a lot of newsletters out there, and that's such a great way to just get a little bite-sized dose in your inbox, just so it's staying front of mind every week. If you take 3 minutes every week to read one AI newsletter that's actually delivering valuable information, you're going to be ahead of like 80% of Americans right now who are not spending that amount of time thinking about it. And finally, I would say other tools like LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning has a lot of free courses available, as well as just YouTube options too. If there's a specific tool that you want to learn how to use, you can YouTube it, and you'll find that there are other creators out there that are sharing helpful content.
Yeah. And so speaking of your courses, so you have a general sort of AI course for designers, but you also have an Instagram, right, course for designers. And so maybe share a little bit about the courses. It sounds like you're constantly updating the content. So yeah, what are the courses all about?
Yeah. So you're right. I have two courses. AI for Interior Designers is really where I teach the tools that I have found to be the most helpful for designers, and gives you a great framework for how to start using them. And one of the things that I like the most about it is that there's a great community of designers from around the world who have completed the course. We have a private Facebook group, and it's just so fun to see designers connecting and sharing how they're applying what they have learned and how they're actually using it in their practice. So that's that course. And then the Instagram course really came after the boom on Instagram. I had so many questions of like, how did your account grow so quickly? And so I was just answering a lot of queries about that. And I thought, well, I could, package this and share this as well to others who might find it helpful. So that course really shares all of the tools and techniques. And a lot of the success I had on Instagram was related to the AI tools that I was using to help with the content I was creating. So that course goes more deeply into using AI for content creation and a social media strategy. And both courses are entirely self-paced, and you can watch them on demand. You stop and start them at any time, because I know what it's like to be a busy professional, and it's hard to watch a course all in one setting. So they're entirely self-paced, and you have lifetime access to them. Anytime I make an update, the content is the students to access for into eternity. So that's a little bit about the courses.
That's great. So you basically have access forever once you purchase the course, and that includes all the updates. So anything on the horizon for the intelligent designer that is exciting to share, or you're just plugging along how things are going now?
Yeah, I am planning a big update for the original course, AI for Interior Designers, that'll be launching later this year. And I'm very excited to do a big overhaul of that, just with all of the changes that have happened recently to some of the tools. So there'll be more information posting soon as that gets ready to relaunch.
Do you also hold webinars? Did I see that you sometimes do some live webinars?
Yeah, so my webinar is also on demand, so you can watch it, access it at any time. It's a completely free information session. I tried to pack as much free information as I could into a 30-minute session, just for those that are maybe curious about AI but aren't sure if they're ready to sign up for a full course yet. That's a great option just to get you started with a couple of tools.
Yeah, okay. So that would be a great place to start if you're not quite sure if you're ready to commit to a full course.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, great. Well, where can our listeners, if they're interested in following you or signing up for your course, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. It's intelligent.designer.ai, or you can also find me on my website, which is theintelligentdesigner.ai.
This has been really interesting, and I think everybody listening will find it as interesting as well. So thank you so much for your time today, Stacy, and I look forward to continuing to follow you and learn more myself about AI.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.